Hello guys and welcome back to the sim. In this episode I'm going to concentrate on building the aft overhead which goes above my head here. As you can see, I've put the rear bulkhead back in position. I've got the dome lights on, lighting myself up here now, and I want to get the displays working. Before I can do that, I need some display port to HDMI adapters that I can wait for from Amazon. Of course, they're coming from the UK all the way out to Brunei, and that's going to take a little while. So in the meantime, let me show you the overhead where this big hole exists that needs to be filled. I've moved the camera so you guys can see a bit better. We're stood in the doorway, the cockpit entrance to the cockpit of the 737. I've dimmed the dome lights so it's not shining bright in my face, and hopefully you can see there's a big hole here that needs filling. And there used to be a framework here that I did used to have an old set of panels for. We've got some new panels supplied by cockpitsimparts.co.uk and we're going to give them a go. Let's head out to the workshop and see how they look. Here we are outside in the workshop, and there is the aft frame. Now this is the old frame, that's why it's got so many holes in it. I have used this before, and this is where it's mounted on its rear hinge. So it's mounted this way and it will fold down for access and maintenance. Here we have all the panels supplied by Cockpit Sim Parts, and they're looking really good. There are no instructions on how to build these. It's kind of, they give you the parts and you've got to figure it out, or build it how you want it really. But what they are is they are really good quality etchings and backlighting. So I think most of these panels will be quite straightforward to fit. Now the flap devices one, flaps and slats panel, I have already looked at, but I've made some extra parts for. They came with the LED inserts like this, and I've pre-printed some new inserts and some backs, because what I find is if you don't cover the backs of the LEDs up, the backlighting will shine through the LEDs and light up the displays erroneously. So these split into two, like so. And that's as far as I've got so far. So my main aim for today is to remove these panels from here, fit the back plates, and then start fitting the panels to the unit and seeing what we need to do to be able to create the whole panel assembly. As you see, it's a bit flimsy in the middle, and I might want to put some extra bracing in along this part here. So for the time being, I've got a drill bit slightly smaller than these M4 bolts, M4 screws, and I'm just going to pre-drill some holes. To help support all the framework and all the panels, I've created some square stock which will hopefully slide in like so. A bit like that. We'll screw it from the top and the bottom. That means we can screw all the panels directly into the wood from the front. Here we have the framework, what I believe is all ready to go. Let me just give you a view from the back. There it is. So here's the supports we've just created. They're nice and shallow, but they should allow all the screws and the bolts to screw directly into them. And of course, it really makes for a firm background. That's all the panels fastened down to the backboard. Now, All these loose panels on top, the face plates, need to be removed. And if I remember right, you have to peel the skins off, the protective skin layer at the back, to allow the backlight to shine through. And they should just peel off in one easy go. Like so. Before I can attach any of the face plates, we need to put some of the electronic components in, such as the switches, the rotary switches, and the captions. So they're all set up around the outside here. At the back we've got all the electrical components and all the indicators to my left here. I've got a picture of what it should look like with all the correct captions LEDs, I hope. There's nothing worse than fitting amber when it should be green or red. So we'll start off with the nav panel, I think, and that requires all these captions to go in here and 2 rotary switches at 45 degrees. That's all the rotary switches fitted. Now time for the little push buttons. That's all the push buttons and rotary switches fitted. Now on to the big switches, the toggle switches. And this one's quite important because this controls my dome lights, which I've just fitted on the bulkhead. So to see this working will be fantastic. And hopefully it'll just push through. Nice tight fit. And we'll tighten that up. And because that switch is now fitted and it's the only one in that panel, we can now fit the faceplate. So once again, I'm checking what goes where, what colour is and what the build order is, and all I've got is somebody else's panel to go by. So next up I'm going to finish this panel off here, we've got an off annunciator to fit here and a black safety switch with toggle switch fitted here. That's this first column here almost done. I've got to fit the annunciator, I'm just waiting for the glue gun to heat up. So while we're doing that column, while we're waiting for that to heat up, let's move on to the mid column, and we've got this panel here. Let me find the correct panel to go on there. It's passenger oxygen. And all we need for this one is an annunciator and again a black safety switch, which I'll just check now. This just requires some screws to attach the faceplate onto the backplate. When this kit arrived from Cockpit Sim Parts, the decals were probably there, but it's been over a year and this package has been moved around the workshop so many times that they've disappeared. I'll have to get in contact with them and see if they can supply or I can buy the decals to replace the ones that are missing, because I'm sure there's probably more that go around that are also missing as well. In the meantime, nothing else I can do but continue on. It's only decals and they can be added at any time. With the caption pushed in, I'm simply going to glue it in place. Next up is the oxygen panel instrument gauge, and I'm temporarily going to fit this because I've got to come back, design it on CAD Fusion 360 and make it operational. But for the time being, to make it look the part, we'll just fit it and put it in place. So I've just got to peel the lens cover off the LCD display. I'm not too sure yet if I'm going to use 7 segments to display the IRS or if I'm going to actually use the LCD displays that comes with Mobifly. I'll go and practice that a bit later and see if it's an option. But for the time being, once again we'll loosely assemble the IRS panel because I imagine that I'll want to adjust it later on. Now these 2 screws are not going to be bolted because they're not going to be long enough, but what I'm hoping is to drill a hole slightly smaller than the thread of the screw and then screw that directly into the wood. And the IRS selector panel, well, that's not a problem because that's already good to go. Clicks in place. Just want to drill this side again because that's going to drill into the wood. Onto the ELT panel next. So these are the parts that I've 3D printed to replace the parts that are given by Cockpit Sim Parts, and hopefully you can see that. They're just 3D printed. The LEDs fit in the middle. They bolt through the holes that are already there. There we go. We've got these 3D printed caps that go on the tops, and that should block all the light out behind the LEDs. So now it's just a process of filling all those holes with LEDs and fitting them in. Here are all the LEDs. Now all I need to do is connect all the cathodes up again, so we only have to wire one wire to the cathodes. And I'm hoping, so all the cathodes point towards me, and that's the bottom of the unit. I can connect them all up so I don't have to add any wires. So that is the first unit all wired up, and now I just need to check to make sure everything works before we go any further. That row's good. Now I am actually going to reattach one of these for trial purposes. Now this may not work for you guys because of all the camera lights, but hopefully we get to see now what it looks like. I've just been inside and I've created some parts on the 3D printer. Hopefully the two ECC buttons. Now I have made a bit of a cock up. I've put the holes in horizontally rather than vertically. I'll come back and redo them at another time. So I've created 4 different types of knobs for the aft overhead. I'll put these onto the website later on. They are a better design. The knobs have got a D-type fitting in the centre, and that allows you to take the D-type or the round types of any rotary switches. I'll put the IRS knobs on first and just align the flat sides and push. Yes. There's one. So next up we have the lower IRS knob. And that just leaves the audio control panel knob. And hopefully... Next up is the EEC buttons. And they're built just like the 6-pack. Hopefully the LEDs will push in from the back. Oh, like so. Perfect. And there we have the LEDs just slotted in. Now, again, in theory, this should just push into the caption and click in. Oh, it's gone in. Like so. So that's the 2 wires attached to the LEDs and the caption. Now we need to put the back plate on. And they should just feed through each of the holes. Now on the revision, the next revision, I think there should be 2 different colour bulbs in here, which I'm going to have to sort out later. And once again, the back should just click into place. And it does. Now for the slightly awkward part of trying to get the 12mm tactile switch all the way in there. Put the cap back on. I think that'll work quite well. Okay, so that's the annunciators put in, and this is what it looks like at the back. And there we have it, guys. That is the build part of the aft overhead complete. In the next episode, I'll concentrate on the wiring. Until next time, I'll catch you later, guys. Sim out.